everyone. My name is Madeline. I'm with Veterans Healing Heart, and today we are going to be doing our workshop on post-traumatic stress disorder. So I wanted to start today with what is post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. And that is an anxiety disorder that can occur following the experience or witnessing of a traumatic event. Some examples of events would be combat, natural disasters, terrorist incidents, serious accidents, or abuse of any kind. That does not mean that a traumatic event definition is limited to these events, but these are some of the most common ones that we see with PTSD. The biggest thing I want to focus on today is what are signs and symptoms. So we find a lot with military personnel that signs and symptoms aren't always recognized because it's viewed as a normal stress of the job. So we want to kind of go over those today. Some of the more common ones are going to be rapid or misplaced anger, hypervigilance, meaning that you are hyper aware of everything that is going on around you to the point that it causes severe anxiety. Self-destructive behavior, things like alcoholism or pill dependency, social isolation, flashbacks, fear, again, severe anxiety, mistrust. It continues on to loss of interest or pleasure in activities. So things that you loved to do once upon a time are not so appealing to you anymore. Guilt, we see this a lot with survivor's guilt in particular. Loneliness, insomnia, nightmares, and emotional detachment, which is a big one that affects families in particular, especially with young kids. To be emotionally detached means that you aren't as present with your family or those around you as you have been in the past. And that's like I said, a big one for families, especially with young kids, because they don't always understand what happened and why things have changed. And so they are highly affected by that. Some things that are not recognizable are going to be things like chronic pain, panic attacks, headaches, nausea, hallucinations, paranoia, and suicidal thoughts. So there's a lot of treatments available. There's prolonged exposure therapy, which basically makes you face your feelings and exposes you to triggers in a safe and controlled environment. There's cognitive processing therapy, which works to reframe your negative thoughts. So it turns the thought that this is my fault, I caused this, to I didn't do this, it's not my fault that this happened. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. What that does is it helps you to process and make sense of the traumas experienced. Brief eclectic psychotherapy. So what this is you write down your feelings, your thoughts, what happened, whatever you want, and you send them off. A lot of people have done this, sending them off in a balloon or in a bottle, or have burned it in a fire. So whatever method you feel best with is what you want to go with there. There's narrative exposure therapy. And what that means is you're going to talk through the traumas to try to make sense of it, whether that be with a therapist or someone close to you, someone you feel comfortable talking to. Written narrative exposure is when you write down the experience, thoughts, and feelings, and you discuss them, again, with a therapist or someone close to you that you feel comfortable with. There's other specific types of cognitive behavioral therapies, and we can get into those in another time. But what I'd like to point out is there's PTSD retreats now. So one example is going to be at campbliss.org/retreats-for-veterans. And there is a list of retreats, weekend events or longer, that help veterans, especially veterans who are dealing with PTSD. There's one specifically for female veterans, one for Marine veterans, and so on and so forth. Just some examples there. There's also a lot of support groups out there, which I highly encourage you to look into. Support groups allow you to talk things over with your peers. It can be hard to talk things over with those who have not experienced anything like what you have gone through. And through a support group, you find people who can relate to you better, and it helps to exchange ideas of coping mechanisms and recognition of triggers and things like that. There's also a lot of therapy aids out there these days. So with the advancements of technology and the accessibility of things, mobile apps are becoming a huge part of therapy these days. They work in conjunction with a therapist to help you when you can't always get to your therapist. So there's mobile apps such as PTSD Coach, PTSD Family Coach, which I think is a very important one, again, because your family is highly affected by what you're going through as well. And so what's best for the relationship is for everyone to get a better understanding of what is going on. So PTSD Family Coach is going to be a big one. Mindfulness Coach, Vet Change, CPT Coach, which is that cognitive processing therapy coach, PE Coach, CBTI Coach, ACT Coach. There's some online resources as well. About Face is a great one that shares stories and experiences of other veterans so that you can, again, not feel alone. You're not alone in this process. There's the National Center for PTSD, PTSD Treatment Decision Aid, which helps you narrow down what kind of treatments might be best for you. There's a lot of information on sites.google.com/view/Veterans Healing Heart. And there's also whiteboard videos on the VA website as well that will help explain PTSD better, what kind of treatments are available, what symptoms there are, things like that. One that I did not put on here but I want to make mention of is also the Wounded Warrior Project, since there are a lot of great resources on that, especially in regards to the retreats and things like that as well. So some things to think about are going to be, what kinds of things do you do to deal with situations that trigger your PTSD? What has been made more difficult for you due to your PTSD? And are there any symptoms that you have experienced that we didn't cover? PTSD is such a broad topic that it's almost impossible to cover everything, but that doesn't mean that there aren't more symptoms and signs out there. So the more information we can gather, the more people we can help. So if there's any symptoms that you've experienced that we didn't cover, please feel free to contact us. You can contact us through the website, again here, the sites.google.com/view/Veterans Healing Heart, and we'd be more than happy to add that to our symptoms as well. And lastly, I want to go over some emergency information, because sometimes the effects of PTSD become too much and you don't always see a way out of it. If you're having thoughts of suicide or you're in crisis, there are options for you. You can go to an emergency room, call 911, or you can call the Veterans Crisis number that I have listed here. It's 800-273-8255. So I want to thank you for following us on this, and if you again have any questions or anything that you'd like to add input wise, please feel free to reach out to us. Have a wonderful day.